The call came at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday while I was reviewing acquisition reports in my downtown office. I'd been expecting it for weeks, ever since my legal team confirmed that the foreclosure proceedings on 1247 Maple Street were moving forward on schedule. Daniela. Mom's voice was barely recognizable through her tears. I need to tell you something. I set down my pen and leaned back in my leather chair, looking out at the city skyline from the 35th floor of the Meridian building. What's wrong, Mom? We lost the house. The bank. They foreclosed. We have to be out by Friday. Her sobs made it hard to understand every word. Your father and we're going to be homeless. I felt the familiar tightness in my chest that came whenever my parents were in crisis. For the past 6 years, I'd watched them struggle with mounting debt, failed business ventures, and Dad's gambling problem that they thought I didn't know about. Mom, slow down. Tell me exactly what happened. The mortgage company, they've been calling for months. We kept hoping Dad's construction business would pick up, but with the economy. Another wave of sobs. We're behind on payments. Way behind. They auctioned the house yesterday. I pulled up the file on my computer. Lopez Holdings LLC had successfully purchased 1247 Maple Street for $420,000 at the foreclosure auction, exactly as I'd planned. The transaction had closed cleanly with no complications. Don't worry, Mom. I'll help you figure this out. How? Her voice cracked with desperation. Daniela, you work at that little startup. You live in a studio apartment. You drive a car older than your brother's kids. How can you help us with something like this? I looked around my corner office, the same office I'd been working from for 3 years as founder and CEO of Meridian Capital Partners, my investment firm that managed $2.8 billion in assets. Mom was right about my car and apartment, though. I'd deliberately maintained a modest lifestyle to keep my success private from my family. I'll figure something out, Mom. Where are you and Dad staying tonight? Your brother Luis said we could sleep on his couch for a few days. But Daniela, we don't have anywhere to go after that. All our things, 40 years of memories in that house. The house at 1247 Maple Street was where I'd grown up. Where I'd learned to ride a bike in the driveway, where Mom had taught me to cook in the bright yellow kitchen, where Dad had helped me with homework at the dining room table. It was also where I'd made the decision to build something bigger than myself after watching my parents struggle financially my entire childhood. Mom, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Of course, Mija. But I don't understand how. Just trust me. Don't sign any paperwork. Don't make any commitments to move anywhere permanently. Give me 24 hours. After hanging up, I called my legal team. Marcus, it's Daniela. The Maple Street property is now officially ours, correct? Yes, the foreclosure purchase cleared this morning. Lopez Holdings LLC is the legal owner. What would you like to do with the property? I want to execute the family restoration plan we discussed. Understood. I'll prepare the paperwork for the lease agreement. Same terms we outlined. Exactly. Market rate rent with an option to purchase. And Marcus? I want this handled very carefully. No mention of Meridian Capital or my involvement. As far as anyone knows, Lopez Holdings is a separate entity. Of course. When do you want to present this to your parents? Tomorrow afternoon. I'll bring them to the property myself. That evening, I sat in my modest studio apartment, the same 500-square-foot space I'd rented 5 years ago when I was building my company from nothing. I could afford a penthouse now, but I'd kept this place for the same reason I drove a 10-year-old Toyota. Because my family's love needed to be real, not conditional on my success. My phone rang. It was my brother Luis. Daniela, I just wanted to let you know Mom and Dad are here. They're pretty shaken up. How are they holding up? Not great. Dad keeps blaming himself. Mom's been crying all day. I wish there was something we could do, but between my mortgage and the kids' expenses. Luis worked as a high school teacher and coached basketball on weekends. He was a good man doing honest work, but he didn't have the resources to help our parents in a meaningful way. Luis, what if I told you I might have found a solution? What kind of solution? Daniela, this isn't a small problem. They owe hundreds of thousands of dollars. Just trust me for now. Can you bring them to the house tomorrow at 2 p.m.? The house. Danielle, they can't go back there. It's too painful. Trust me. Okay, but, Daniela, please don't get their hopes up if you don't have a real plan. The next morning, I met with my property management team to finalize the details. The house would need some updates, new paint, carpet cleaning, a few minor repairs. Nothing major, but enough to show that the new ownership cared about maintaining the property. How quickly can we get a crew in there? I asked my operations director, Sarah. We can have people there this afternoon. What's the timeline? I want it perfect by this weekend. Full restoration to move-in condition. That's ambitious but doable. What's the budget? Whatever it takes. This is a priority project. At 2 p.m. sharp, I pulled up to 1247 Maple Street in my old Toyota. Luis's car was already there and I could see my parents sitting in the back seat, both looking older and more fragile than I'd ever seen them. The house looked exactly as I remembered, a modest 2-story home with a small front yard and the oak tree Dad had planted when I was 10. The only difference was the sold sign in the yard and the absence of Mom's flower boxes, which had been removed during the foreclosure process. I walked over to Luis's car and tapped on the window. Hey everyone. Mom got out slowly, her eyes red from crying. Mija, why did you want us to come here? It's too hard to see it like this. Dad remained in the car, staring at the house with an expression I'd never seen before, complete defeat. I wanted to show you something, I said. Can we go look at the backyard? Daniela, we can't just walk around here. Someone else owns this now. I reached into my purse and pulled out a set of keys. Actually, I have permission from the new owner. Luis frowned. How did you get permission? How do you even know who bought it? Because I've been working on this problem longer than you think. I led them around to the backyard, where Mom's vegetable garden still showed signs of her careful tending despite weeks of neglect. Dad finally got out of the car and followed us, his shoulders slumped with resignation. Mom, remember when you used to grow tomatoes back here? And Dad, remember building that deck when I was in high school? Daniela, please, Mom whispered. This is too painful. What if I told you that you could stay? Both my parents looked at me with confusion. What do you mean? Dad spoke for the first time since I'd arrived. The new owner is looking for tenants. Good tenants who would take care of the place. Mija, Mom said gently, we can't afford rent. We couldn't even afford the mortgage payments. What if the rent was affordable? What if it was something you could manage on Dad's social security and the part-time work you've been doing? Dad's eyes narrowed. Daniela, what aren't you telling us? This was the moment I'd been preparing for. 3 years of building a multi-billion-dollar investment firm while my family thought I was struggling at a startup. 3 years of watching them worry about money while I had the power to solve their problems but needed to do it the right way. The new owner is a company called Lopez Holdings. They specialize in family-friendly housing solutions. And you know someone there? Luis asked. You could say that. I took a deep breath. I know someone there because I am Lopez Holdings. The silence that followed was complete. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. What? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. I bought the house, Mom. 3 weeks ago through my holding company. Dad stepped backward, nearly stumbling. Daniela, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that your daughter, who you think works at a startup, actually runs an investment firm worth $2.8 billion. Luis sat down hard on the deck steps. Daniela, that's not possible. I pulled out my phone and showed them the Lopez Holdings website, scrolling to the About Us section where my photo appeared as founder and CEO. For the past 3 years, I've been building Meridian Capital Partners. We manage investments for high-net-worth individuals and institutions. Lopez Holdings is one of our subsidiary companies. Mom was staring at my phone screen like it was written in a foreign language. But you live in that tiny apartment. Because I chose to. Because I was building something and didn't want to get distracted by lifestyle inflation. And your car is paid off and reliable. When you're focused on building wealth, you don't waste money on depreciating assets. Dad found his voice again. Daniela, if this is true, if you really have this kind of money, why didn't you help us before we lost the house? This was the question I'd been dreading. Because I needed you to make the hard decisions about Dad's gambling and the business debts. If I'd just paid everything off, nothing would have changed. Gambling. Luis looked confused. What gambling? Dad's face went pale. Daniela, how did you? Dad, I've known about the poker games and the sports betting for 2 years. I know about the $80,000 you borrowed against the house to cover losses. I know about the business loans you took out to chase bigger bets. Mom turned to stare at her husband. Roberto, is this true? Maria, Dad, I said gently, the foreclosure wasn't really about the economy or the construction business. It was about the gambling debts. The conversation that followed was painful but necessary. Dad admitted to years of gambling problems, chasing losses with bigger bets, borrowing against their home to fund his addiction. Mom learned about debts she'd never known existed. Roberto, Mom said finally, how could you not tell me? I kept thinking I could win it back. I kept thinking the next bet would fix everything. I looked at my father, this man who'd taught me about hard work and integrity, who'd also made choices that nearly destroyed his family. Dad, the foreclosure is actually the best thing that could have happened. What do you mean? Because now we can start over with complete honesty. No hidden debts, no gambling problems, no secrets. But the house is yours again. If you want it. I pulled out a folder from my bag. I have a lease agreement here. Market rate rent, which works out to about $1,200 per month. Something you can afford on your combined income. After 2 years of on-time payments, you'll have the option to purchase the house back at current market value. Mom looked at the papers, then at me. Mija, why would you do this? Because you're my parents. Because this is your home. Because everyone deserves a second chance. But the money we owe you. You don't owe me anything. This is an investment property for my company. You're simply tenants who happen to be my parents. Luis was reading over the lease agreement. Daniela, this rent is way below market rate for this area. Good tenants are worth the discount. Dad stepped forward, tears in his eyes. Daniela, I don't understand how you forgive me for nearly losing your childhood home. Dad, I'm not forgiving you. I'm giving you the chance to rebuild. What's the difference? Forgiveness is about the past. Rebuilding is about the future. Over the next hour we walked through the house room by room. I explained the renovation plans, fresh paint throughout, new carpeting in the bedrooms, updated appliances in the kitchen. Everything would be ready for them to move back in by the weekend. But Daniela, Mom said as we stood in the living room, I still don't understand why you kept this secret from us. Why didn't you tell us you were successful? I looked around the room where I'd spent countless hours as a child, where I'd made the decision to build something that would protect my family from financial crisis. Because I needed to know that your love wasn't conditional on my success. Because I needed you to see me as your daughter, not as someone who could solve your problems with money. And now we can have an honest relationship. No more secrets about gambling, no more hiding my success, no more pretending anyone is something they're not. Luis stood up from the couch. Daniela, I need to apologize. For what? For not seeing what you were building. For treating you like the little sister who needed guidance instead of the successful businesswoman you'd become. Luis, you've always supported me. You just didn't know the whole story. But I should have asked better questions. I should have looked deeper instead of making assumptions based on your car and apartment. Dad stepped forward. Daniela, I need to ask you something. What's that? Do you think I can beat this gambling problem? I looked at my father, seeing the genuine fear in his eyes. Dad, I think you can beat it if you commit to getting real help. Professional help. Like counseling? Like Gamblers Anonymous. Like regular check-ins with a therapist. Like complete transparency about finances going forward. And if I don't? If I relapse? Then the lease agreement includes clauses about financial responsibility and property care. This is a business arrangement, Dad. It comes with business expectations. He nodded slowly. I understand. But Dad, I believe you can do this. I wouldn't be offering you this opportunity if I didn't think you could succeed. As we prepared to leave that afternoon, Mom pulled me aside in the kitchen. Mija, I have one more question. What's that? Are you happy? With all this success, all this money, are you actually happy? I considered her question seriously. I'm happy that I can help my family. I'm happy that I built something meaningful. But mostly, I'm happy that we can finally be completely honest with each other. Even about your father's gambling? Especially about that. Secrets are what got us into this mess. And you're not angry with us? For not seeing what you'd accomplished. Mom, you saw a daughter who lived modestly and worked hard. You weren't wrong about that. You just didn't see the whole picture. But we worried about you. We tried to give you career advice. And I let you because I needed to know that your concern came from love, not disappointment. 3 weeks later, I helped my parents move back into 1247 Maple Street. The house looked better than it had in years: fresh paint, new carpeting, and Mom's flower boxes reinstalled under the front windows. Dad had started attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings twice a week. Mom had returned to her part-time job at the local library. Luis visited every Sunday for family dinner, just like old times. The first rent check arrived at my office exactly on time, written in Mom's careful handwriting. Lopez Holdings LC $1,200 September rent. I didn't deposit it immediately. Instead, I kept it on my desk for a week as a reminder that sometimes the best investment isn't about financial returns. Sometimes it's about giving people the chance to rebuild their lives with dignity intact. My assistant knocked on my door one afternoon. "Ms. Lopez, your mother called. She wanted to know if the owner of Lopez Holdings would be interested in renting them some space in the backyard for a larger vegetable garden." I smiled. "Tell her the owner would be delighted to discuss expansion options." "Should I schedule a meeting?" "No need. I'll be there for Sunday dinner anyway." 6 months later, Dad made his final payment to clear the remaining gambling debts. The lease agreement included an option to purchase the house after 2 years of on-time payments, and they were well on track to become homeowners again. But the most important change wasn't financial. The most important change was that we could finally be honest with each other about who we really were, not who we appeared to be, not who we thought we should be, but who we actually were. Sometimes the best way to save your family isn't to rescue them from their problems. Sometimes it's to give them the tools and opportunity to solve their problems themselves. And sometimes the house you grew up in becomes the home you get to give back to the people who made you who you are. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Mija, the tomatoes are coming in beautifully this year. Bring containers on Sunday, you're taking some home." I texted back, "I'll bring the biggest containers I can find." Some investments pay dividends in ways you never expected.